The sky above Earth shimmered with an unnatural glow as the Velari fleet descended, their ships gliding effortlessly through the atmosphere like celestial beings returning to a long-forgotten world. Cities stood still, their inhabitants frozen in awe and fear, gazing at the sleek, silver vessels that hovered above them. The world's governments, though initially divided on how to respond, had no choice but to come together when the first message was transmitted, calm, clear, and in every human language simultaneously. We are the Velari. We come not as conquerors, but as teachers. We offer knowledge, not war. Inside the United Nations headquarters, world leaders gathered, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and unease. The Velari had requested an audience, and the invitation was impossible to refuse. When the doors of the Grand Chamber slid open, they entered, not as grotesque, alien creatures, but as beings of striking elegance, their features humanoid yet refined, their presence both serene and commanding. Draped in flowing garments that shimmered like liquid silver, they moved without hesitation, their golden eyes scanning the room with a wisdom beyond human comprehension. Cithrin, the lead envoy, stepped forward and placed a delicate hand on the smooth, luminescent surface of a device they had brought with them. Instantly, the room was filled with a three-dimensional projection of Earth, not as it was, but as it could be. Towering green cities powered by clean energy, lush landscapes restored from ruin, sickness eradicated, and humanity standing among the stars. A murmur rippled through the crowd as the possibilities unfolded before them. "We have observed your species," Cithrin spoke, his voice gentle yet firm. "You stand at a crossroads. Your potential is limitless, yet your struggles keep you bound to a cycle of conflict and destruction. We offer you the knowledge to break free." Some leaders exchanged wary glances. The President of the United States leaned forward, resting his elbows on the polished table. "And what do you expect in return?" His tone was cautious, laced with the weight of history and distrust. Cithrin regarded him calmly. "Nothing but your willingness to learn." Over the next several weeks, the Velari's presence became woven into the fabric of human society. They shared advanced medical breakthroughs, revolutionized energy production, and introduced technology that would allow humanity to explore the cosmos. Scientists and scholars eagerly absorbed their lessons, their minds expanding with possibilities. Cities began incorporating Velari technology, replacing outdated infrastructures with self-sustaining systems that healed rather than harmed the environment. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were cured overnight. Yet, not everyone embraced this newfound enlightenment. In hushed corners of political offices and corporate boardrooms, some saw the Velari not as benefactors, but as a threat to the status quo. The idea that knowledge could be freely given, without contracts, without profit, was unfathomable to them. Resistance brewed in unseen places, as powerful figures whispered of sovereignty, of control slipping from their grasp. Even among the general public, fear took root. Who were these beings to reshape humanity's destiny? What if their intentions were not as pure as they seemed? Cithrin observed these reactions with quiet contemplation. He had expected some hesitation, but the depth of human complexity intrigued him. There were those who welcomed change with open hearts, and those who clung to the old ways, even when they knew they were flawed. He walked through the streets of New York City, disguised by a simple cloak, listening to the voices of the people. A young girl tugged at her mother's sleeve, pointing at a holographic display of the Velari's teachings. "Do you think they're really here to help us?" the child asked, her voice filled with innocent wonder. The mother hesitated before answering. "I hope so," she whispered. At the same time, far from hopeful eyes, military leaders debated. Some saw an opportunity, a chance to wield technology that could make Earth a dominant force in the galaxy. Others feared dependence. If the Velari left, would humanity collapse without their guidance? There was an unspoken tension, a fear that if the Velari had come to judge humanity rather than teach it, they might not like what they found. In a secret underground facility, a group of scientists studied Velari technology with quiet desperation. They dissected every piece of knowledge, not to use it as intended, but to reverse engineer it, to create weapons beyond anything the Earth had ever known. "If they ever turn on us," one of the researchers muttered, "we need to be ready." Cithrin sensed the undercurrents of suspicion, but he remained patient. Change, he knew, was never easy. Yet, as he stood atop a balcony overlooking the sprawling cityscape, he couldn't help but feel a quiet concern. Humanity had brilliance, but also chaos. Passion, but also destruction. He had come to teach them, but already he had begun to learn something himself. Wisdom alone was not enough. Understanding the human heart was a far greater challenge than he had anticipated. In the distance, a protest had formed, voices rising against the presence of the Velari. Signs demanding their departure waved under the glow of artificial lights. Cithrin closed his eyes, listening not just to the words, but to the emotions behind them. Fear, anger, hope, desperation, all intertwined in a chaotic symphony. He opened his eyes, his golden irises reflecting the city lights. Perhaps, he murmured to himself, we were too naive to think teaching would be simple. And so, the seeds of the great lesson began to take root. Not in the teachings the Velari had brought, but in the realization that this encounter would change them just as much as it would change humanity. The question remained, would humanity prove itself worthy of the knowledge, or would they teach the Velari something far more profound about the nature of existence? The answer had yet to be revealed. The Velari had expected resistance, but they had underestimated the depth of humanity's contradictions. In some parts of the world, they were welcomed as saviors, symbols of a brighter future. In others, they were feared, distrusted, and seen as harbingers of unseen dangers. Yet, despite the mounting tension, they remained steadfast in their mission. They continued sharing knowledge, opening new schools where humans and Velari scholars worked side by side, developing technologies that would propel Earth into a new era. They taught medicine that could repair the human body at a cellular level, energy solutions that could power entire cities without pollution, and even theories on space travel that would one day take humanity beyond its own solar system. It should have been an age of enlightenment, but the more the Velari gave, the more fractures appeared within human society. In the corridors of power, whispers of unease grew louder. Some leaders, seeing their influence waning as reliance on Velari technology increased, questioned whether these gifts were a form of control rather than generosity. Meetings held behind closed doors echoed with discussions of independence, of ensuring that humanity did not become subordinate to these otherworldly beings. The military, despite reassurances from Velari envoys that their kind held no interest in conquest, began running simulations, trying to determine the weaknesses of these celestial visitors. Their ships, their technology, their biology, every aspect was analyzed with growing paranoia. On the ground, these tensions manifested in different ways. While some embraced the new knowledge, others resisted. Factories powered by free and limitless energy saw entire industries rendered obsolete, leaving many uncertain about their future. Politicians, long accustomed to controlling resources, struggled to adapt to a world where scarcity was being erased. Religious leaders debated what the Velari's arrival meant for the concept of divinity, with some viewing them as celestial messengers, while others called them deceivers sent to lead humanity astray. The world stood on a precipice, caught between boundless possibility and deep-seated fear. Cithrin, watching all of this unfold, found himself troubled. He had studied humans for years before arriving, observed their wars and their triumphs, their cruelty and their compassion. Yet there was something he had failed to fully grasp before stepping onto their world, their ability to resist even the very things that could save them. Change, no matter how beneficial, was never welcomed by all. And for the first time, he began to question whether they had miscalculated. One evening, under the glow of Earth's moon, Cithrin met with a group of human scientists, some of the brightest minds the planet had to offer. They gathered in a facility deep within the Andes Mountains, where a Velari research center had been constructed. The discussions started with excitement, the humans eager to learn more about Velari advancements. Yet, as the conversation continued, Cithrin sensed something beneath their enthusiasm, a restrained frustration, a lingering doubt. One of the scientists, an older man with sharp eyes and tired lines on his face, finally voiced what others had not dared to say. "You come here with knowledge beyond anything we've ever imagined," he said, his voice steady but filled with an underlying weight. "You promise to elevate us, to make us more than we are. But tell me, have you ever considered that we need to struggle to grow? That without hardship, without the fight, we might lose what makes us human. Cithrin tilted his head, considering the words. Do you believe suffering is necessary for progress? The scientist sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. I believe that without struggle we stagnate. Every great leap in human history came from adversity. We fought diseases and built medicine. We waged wars and then created peace. Even our mistakes teach us. If you hand us a perfect world without effort, what happens to our will to innovate, to adapt? What happens to who we are? For the first time since arriving, Cithrin found himself without an immediate answer. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had witnessed planets reduced to ashes and others thrive under guidance. But the human perspective was different. Their history was built on overcoming hardship, on pushing against the impossible. He looked around the room, at the faces filled with both wonder and concern. They wanted knowledge, but they also wanted to earn it. The Velari had come as teachers, but had they robbed humanity of the very process that had defined them for millennia? Days later, in a quiet moment, Cithrin stood on the balcony of the Velari embassy, overlooking the city below. The lights of human civilization stretched endlessly, vibrant and alive. Despite their divisions, despite their fears, they were undeniably resilient. He had thought he was here to uplift them, but perhaps he was the one who had something to learn. He turned as one of his fellow envoys approached. They are not like the others, Cithrin admitted, his voice thoughtful. Every civilization we have guided has welcomed our gifts without question. But humans, they resist. They question not just us, but themselves. They fear losing something they cannot fully define. The other Velari nodded slowly. Then perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Cithrin exhaled, watching as a group of humans passed below, deep in conversation, their expressions animated. They did not know he was watching, did not know they were at the heart of an alien debate that would determine the future of their species. He had thought that offering knowledge would be enough, but now he understood. Humanity needed more than answers. They needed the chance to find those answers themselves. And so, the Velari made a decision. They would not simply hand humanity the future on a silver platter. Instead, they would guide them toward it. They would offer the tools, but let humanity build their own way forward. The greatest lesson they could give was not knowledge itself, but the understanding of how to wield it wisely. As the night stretched on, Cithrin felt something unfamiliar, a quiet admiration. Humanity was far from perfect, but in their imperfection, in their defiance of easy solutions, they were something rare. He had come to teach, but he now realized that the greatest wisdom often came not from answers, but from the willingness to question everything. The Velari had grown accustomed to seeing humanity's curiosity in action, but nothing had prepared them for the sheer unpredictability of human nature. Their technology, their knowledge, everything they had offered was meant to guide humanity toward a new era of enlightenment. And yet, time and time again, humans found ways to twist those lessons into something uniquely their own. Cithrin watched from the observation deck of the Velari embassy as a group of human engineers worked on an experimental reactor based on Velari energy principles. It should have been a straightforward process. The Velari had designed these systems for efficiency, for stability. But the humans had decided to improve upon it, adjusting variables, pushing limits, taking risks that no Velari would ever consider. And somehow, against all logic, it worked. The reactor was running at double the expected efficiency, its output stable, yet producing results that defied even the most advanced Velari simulations. It was both impressive and deeply unsettling. Cithrin turned to one of his fellow envoys, a scientist named Vorith, who had spent years studying human ingenuity. They do not follow the path we set, Cithrin said, his voice filled with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. They are not content with simply using what we give them. They must alter, adapt, challenge. Vorith sighed, watching as the humans cheered over their success. I have observed this pattern again and again, he admitted. They are incapable of accepting things as they are. To them, perfection is not an end state. It is merely a stepping stone to something greater, even if they do not know where that path leads. Cithrin remained silent for a long moment. The Velari had expected humans to struggle with the knowledge they provided, but they had not anticipated this relentless need to reinvent, to push beyond boundaries that even the Velari themselves had deemed absolute. It was fascinating. It was dangerous. The anomaly was not limited to engineering. The Velari had introduced new medical advancements, procedures capable of curing diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Yet rather than simply accept these treatments, human doctors began experimenting, combining Velari techniques with their own, finding solutions to problems that the Velari had never even considered. In the arts, in philosophy, in warfare, everywhere the Velari looked, humans were not simply learning. They were reshaping what they learned into something new. But not all of these innovations were benign. In the shadows of human society, factions had begun using Velari knowledge for their own ends. Black markets had sprung up, trading in alien technology with no regard for the consequences. Governments, despite their public alliances with the Velari, had begun developing weapons based on their advancements, fearful of falling behind in an unseen arms race. The Velari had come to teach, to uplift. Yet their gifts had become tools of power, of ambition. Cithrin found himself standing before the Human Council, the leaders of Earth who had been appointed to oversee cooperation with the Velari. The chamber was filled with tension. On one side, those who embraced the Velari's presence, who saw them as the key to humanity's future. On the other, those who had grown wary, who feared that humanity was becoming dependent on alien knowledge, that they were losing control over their own destiny. "You came here to guide us," one of the council members said, his voice measured but firm. "But what you fail to consider is that we do not follow. We lead. We innovate. We take what is given and make it our own. And that is not something you can change." Cithrin met the man's gaze, understanding dawning. This was not resistance. This was not defiance. This was simply the nature of humanity itself. They were not content to walk a predetermined path. They would carve their own way forward, even if it meant walking into the unknown, even if it meant risking failure. After the meeting, Cithrin walked through the streets of a human city, observing the people, the lights, the unrelenting motion. This was a civilization on the brink of something great, not because of what the Velari had given them, but because of their refusal to be shaped by anything but their own hands. He had thought they came to teach, but perhaps it was the Velari who needed to learn. The Velari ships departed Earth's orbit in silent formation, their sleek, silver hulls reflecting the distant light of the sun. On board the flagship, Cithrin stood before the central viewport, watching as the blue-green planet shrank into the void. The mission had been unprecedented. The Velari had arrived as teachers, as guides, intent on uplifting humanity. Instead, they were leaving with a lesson of their own, one far more profound than any they had expected. Behind him, Voritha's voice carried a note of reluctant acceptance. "We thought they would struggle to understand our knowledge. Instead, they reshaped it. We believed they would need centuries to reach the level of our science, yet they have already begun outpacing us in ways we cannot predict." His dark eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Did we make a mistake in coming here?" Cithrin clasped his hands behind his back, his gaze never leaving the planet. "I once believed that progress followed a single path, that wisdom came through careful, deliberate refinement," he said slowly. "But humans do not walk our path. They forge their own. And in doing so, they have created something neither we nor any other race in the known universe could have anticipated." The diplomatic mission had ended abruptly. After months of growing tension, of failed attempts to contain humanity's relentless desire to experiment and adapt, the Velari Council had reached its decision. They would withdraw, not out of hostility, not out of failure, but out of a dawning realization that their presence was no longer needed. The final meeting with the Human Council had been brief, filled with an unspoken understanding. The humans were not angry, nor were they grateful in the way the Velari had expected. Instead, they had simply nodded, as if they had already foreseen this conclusion. As if they had known from the start that they would not be shaped by the Velari, but would instead take what they were given and shape themselves. On the streets of Earth cities, signs of their rapid evolution were everywhere. Energy sources the Velari had only shared in the most rudimentary forms had been transformed into sprawling networks of human innovation. Medical advancements meant to heal had become tools for rewriting genetic codes, for reshaping life itself. Even their weapons, Cithrin shuddered at the thought, had evolved in ways the Velari could scarcely comprehend. And yet, despite all of this, despite the unsettling pace at which humanity had adapted and surpassed expectation, there was no hostility, no war, No conquest. The humans did not seek to dominate the stars as the Velari had once feared. They sought only to understand, to explore, to create. It was as if the very concept of limitation was foreign to them. Vorith exhaled, shaking his head. "It is dangerous," he muttered. "A species that refuses to accept boundaries, that does not fear the unknown, that is dangerous." Cithrin finally turned from the viewport, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps," he admitted. "But tell me, is it not also extraordinary?" The Velari fleet activated their slipstream drives, and in an instant they were gone from Earth's sky. But they did not return home unchanged. The echoes of humanity's lessons followed them, forcing them to reconsider everything they had once believed about progress, about the nature of civilization itself. For the first time in their long history, the Velari understood that true knowledge did not come from careful preservation. It came from the fearless, reckless pursuit of the unknown. And that, above all else, was the lesson they would carry with them forever.